So the first episode of Avatar starts with a brother and sister, let's call them Katara and Sokka. They're out on a boat arguing because apparently Sokka is allergic to fun and Katara won't stop yelling about water magic. Now as the arguments heat up more and more like your mom on a Wednesday, and Katara gets so mad she ends up smacking an iceberg and somehow it cracks open revealing this giant glowing ice ball. And inside is the lost Avatar, who's a 12-year-old kid named Aang, and oh yeah, he shows up with his giant flying cow thing called Appa, who you immediately know is the MVP of the show. Now Aang sees Katara and instantly falls in love, which I mean, yeah, dude's been stuck in ice for 100 years, I'd simp too. Meanwhile, Katara gives off the I'm annoyed 24/7 energy, which is pretty accurate to her character. They then take Aang back to their village, everyone freaks out, and then they're like, wait a minute, this dude's an airbender. Yeah. No kidding. Also, tiny little detail, the giant energy beam from the iceberg was seen by everybody near it, and that's when we cut to Mr. Honor himself, the half-burn boy Zuko, and his tea-loving uncle, Ira. So episode 2 picks up with the Fire Nation pulling up receipts. Zuko storms the Southern Water Tribe like he's here for a refund, demanding the Avatar. Sokka charges in with pure delusion and a boomerang in hand and gets folded in 2 seconds. After watching Sokka get beaten more than his mom, Aang decides to turn himself in to protect the tribe, gets tossed on Zuko's ship and immediately treats prison like a field trip. He airbends out of his cuffs, Penguin slides across the deck and speed runs his escape. Back at the village, however, Katara and Sokka hop on Appa, who decides now is the perfect time to forget how to fly. Then we get hit with the iconic scene, yip yip. Appa instantly remembers and they start to chase Zuko's ship. Meanwhile, Aang is just causing chaos and we get our first mini battle between Aang and Zuko. Zuko's angry fire punches and Aang dodging and clowning on this fool. In the end, Team Avatar escaped without an issue. Now episode 3 starts with Katara basically being Aang's #1 fangirl because finally there's a bender in front of her. Also, this begins her friend zoning and playing with Aang's heart arc. Meanwhile, Aang's like, hey, let's go visit the Southern Air Temple, and Sokka's immediately like, no. Bad idea, absolutely not. Which naturally means Katara says, let's go do this. So they fly off on Appa and land at the air temple where Aang is like, yay, I'm home. While Katara is staring at the empty ruins like, oh no. How do we tell this kid literally everybody he's ever known is dead? Cue the flashbacks to Aang's old buddy Monk Gyatso, who was basically the only adult with personality in the air temple. Aang gets all sentimental, then stumbles into, oh I don't know, a literal pile of skeletons surrounded by a seemingly familiar guy. And then he puts 2 and 2 together real quick, realizing that his buddy Monk Gyatso is among the bodies. The Fire Nation really did wipe out the air nomads. Congrats, Aang, now you know what trauma is. He then begins to crash out so hard he goes full Avatar state for the first time. Glowing tattoos, glowing eyes, the whole temple starts lighting up like a rave. Katara and Sokka are like, what do we do? The answer is pretty simple, guys. Nothing, just don't die. While this is happening, the statue room with all the past lives lights up along with temples around the world, alerting everyone the Avatar has returned. And on a side note, we even get to see our first Agni Kai, the battle to the death between General Zhao and Zuko. By the way, General Zhao is probably the realest and most hated villain of the entire franchise. But yeah, they battle and Zuko claps him. Episode 4 kicks off with Aang still thinking being the Avatar is just one big vacation package. He's like, let's ride giant koi fish. Meanwhile, Katara's like, we literally just found out the Fire Nation committed mass genocide against our people, so maybe we shouldn't. But Aang doesn't listen, so they end up on Kyoshi Island, where the locals immediately freak out because, holy crap, it's the Avatar. Except instead of worshipping him, they tie him up like he's a wanted criminal. Sokka's smug about it until the Kyoshi Warriors roll up and absolutely humble him in 2 seconds flat. Shout out to Suki for clowning on this man so hard he had to rethink his entire personality. Meanwhile, Aang's busy being a celebrity, the kids love him, the girls love him, and Aang is eating it up like free candy. Katara, however, doesn't enjoy it because again, she's the girl who friend zones you, but at the same time doesn't want anyone else to have you but her. So of course she's not impressed. But while Aang's too busy riding the Unagi, a literal sea monster the size of skyscrapers, guess who shows up? Zuko. Because of course he does. He burns the village down and Aang's finally like, okay fine, maybe this Avatar thing is kinda serious. He scares off Zuko with the Unagi, helps put out the flames, and suddenly he's a hero again. Then the gang dips, leaving the villagers traumatized and rebuilding their home. Oh, and this is the start of Sokka's backbending escapades, as him and Suki kiss for the first time. And then we hit episode 5 where the gang rolls into Omashu, which is basically the Earth Kingdom's New York. And Aang's like, trust me, it's friendly. And in order to get into the city, he cosplays as the crustiest grandpa alive, Pips and Pipsalopagus the Third. We also get to see the start of the Cabbage Vendor's villain arc. Then Aang takes Katara and Sokka on the city mail shoes like it's a theme park. They crash, destroy a man's entire cabbage-based livelihood, again, and gets arrested in record time. Enter the king. He clocks Aang as the Avatar in 2 seconds and goes, neat. 3 deadly challenges for you. Also, your friends get fancy, debt jewelry, and if you don't do what I say, they will die. So Katara and Sokka get locked up in this creepy crystal stuff that keeps growing the longer Aang takes, and then we begin the Hunger Games. Challenge 1. Grab a lunchbox key dangling in a waterfall. Not that hard till you realize Aang was this close. This close to literally being the last airbender. Challenge 2, fetch the king's pet. Aang chases a cute bunny, almost dies to a gorilla goat kaiju, then realizes that's actually Flopsy, the king's pet. Finally, challenge 3, pick your opponent. Aang then big brains it and points at the king, which you can't blame him for, but then the old man drops his rope, showing us his chiseled body, and proceeds to yeet rocks at the child. After a whole lot of airbending, dodgeball, and tornadoes, Aang barely squeezes out a victory. But there's a final twist, however. The king makes Aang guess his name. Aang actually uses his brain for once. It's Boomy, his unhinged bestie from 100 years ago. By the way, it's insane to think that this crazy poor kid saw the start of the war, worked his way up, and not only became King of Omashu, but the greatest Earthbender alive, for now anyways, probably fought Sozin and his son Azulon, and made the kingdom super rich by selling weapons to other nations. Oh yeah, and he's over 112 years old and probably will see the end of the war. And then after everything is said and done, he just tells Aang he must master the elements in order to beat Ozai and end the war. Episode 6 starts with the squad rolling into an Earth Kingdom village, and wow, it's depressing. The Fire Nation basically turned the place into a sweatshop, and the villagers are too scared to fight back, so the gang, mainly Katara, meets this kid named Haru, who's secretly an Earthbender. Katara begs him to help this old man who's about to be crushed by rocks. Haru agrees since he's crushing on Katara. However, this old ungrateful man snitches on Haru, and the Fire Nation soldiers come to take him away. Good job, Katara. Now she feels so bad, she decides to come up with a plan alongside Sokka and Aang to infiltrate the Fire Nation prison in the middle of the ocean. She meets all the Earthbenders, gives a motivational speech which doesn't work until it just does, I guess, and eventually they all are freed and willing to join the war against the Fire Nation now. So I guess it all worked out. Then we have episode 7, the Spirit World. So the gang strolls into this random Earth Kingdom village. Everybody's panicking about this kaiju that keeps showing up at night because it snatches people. So Aang's like, don't worry, I've totally got this. Spoiler, he doesn't. So night falls and we see this giant panda kaiju, and Aang tries to talk it out with the monster, but it begins yeeting him into the spirit world and kidnapping Sokka for dessert. And then Spirit Aang meets a dragon who gives him a free Uber ride to Avatar Roku. Then Roku's like, hey kid, meet me at the Fire Nation temple tomorrow or the world ends. And after everything, Aang pops back into reality, calms the giant panda monster down by reminding him that trees grow back. Oh, and he rescues Sokka. Meanwhile, Uncle Iroh was out having a fun spa day, got himself kidnapped by the Earth Kingdom soldiers, and spends the whole subplot riding along in chains half naked. Oh, and Zuko eventually tracks him down, burns down half a forest because that's what he does, and rescues him. Cut to episode 8. The deadline is here, and Aang's gotta sneak into the Fire Nation while flying a giant sky bison straight over the border. But of course that doesn't work because you know who's tailing him? Zuko. Because stalking Aang is like his new personality. So eventually Team Avatar land at Roku's temple. Now this temple is run by fire sages who are supposedly there to help the Avatar. Turns out most of them are loyal to Fire Daddy Ozai, except for one dude who's like, don't worry about them, I got you kid. Together, they burst Aang into a sanctuary at the last possible second, just as Zuko and bargain bin villain Admiral Zhao shows up. The solstice hits, Roku's spirit steps in, and suddenly Aang is a flame-throwing demigod. Roku incinerates the temple by lava bending, which terrifies the fire sages and everybody there, and casually tells Aang the big bad news. Sozin's comet is coming, it'll make Firelord Ozai a walking nuke, so like hurry up and defeat him already. That's it, now we head to episode 9, which starts with Zuko being cranky because he hasn't caught the Avatar, so he decides to cut a deal with some pirates. Meanwhile, Team Avatar is broke, like dirt broke. Katara wants a Waterbending Scroll, Sokka wants dinner, and Aang just wants to ride around on Appa. They just happen to run into the same pirate crew, and Katara ends up swiping a secret scroll from them. By the way, this is the start of her hypocrisy arc. Whatever. Now they're wanted by both pirates and Zuko. She gets mad at Aang for being able to learn waterbending better and faster than she can, and then a Walmart battle royale ensues between Zuko, Team Avatar, and the pirates. At the end, everyone just goes their own way. Team Avatar escapes with the Katara learning nothing from this. And now comes episode 10, which starts with Team Avatar getting jumped in the woods by some Fire Nation goons. And right when it looks bad, boom! They're saved by a guy with anime hair and way too much confidence, named Jet. He's basically this edgelord version of Robin Hood, so Katara immediately falls in love with him. Also note, Jet is actually her first kiss in the entire series. But yeah, and Aang's just happy to have new friends, and Sokka, well, he can already smell some BS coming off from this guy Jet. Eventually, Jet introduces them to the Freedom Fighters, and they manipulate Katara into freezing an old Fire Nation soldier. Totally not a red flag, right? Turns out, Jet's master plan is blowing up a dam and casually drowning an innocent village. However, Katara keeps sipping his Kool-Aid until Sokka saves the villagers himself and exposes Jet as a psycho. By the end, Katara is crushed and Sokka just stands there like, I told you so. Next up, the Great Divide. So episode 11 is my least favorite episode. However, it's about two tribes at war. Team Trust Fund versus Team Dumpster Divers. They hate each other because some family legend over 100 years ago, and you know, who really cares? It's pretty lame. Aang ends up solving their issues by lying and saying they were wrong because he was actually there, and tells them what he believed actually happened that day. So I guess everything is saved by the Avatar who lies. And now for episode 12, The Storm. Team Avatar is broke and arguing when a fisherman calls out Aang for abandoning the world. This triggers Aang's guilt and flashbacks. The monks told him he was an Avatar early, tried to separate him from his friends, and in fear he ran away on Appa, ending up frozen in an iceberg for 100 years. Meanwhile, Iroh explains Zuko's past to the crew. We learn Zuko spoke out of turn in a war meeting, refused to fight at Agni Kai with his father, who ends up scarring him on his face and banishing him. Yeah, and during a violent storm, both groups struggle. Aang saves Katara, Sokka, and the fisherman while pushing through his guilt, and Zuko risks himself to save his crew. The episode ends with the storm clearing, foreshadowing what's to come for Aang and Zuko. And that's when we get the Blue Spirit. Episode 13 starts with Katara and Sokka sick in bed, leaving Aang to do all the work. Meanwhile, Zhao's on the rise again, and this time he hires the Yu Yang Archers. It's an elite sharpshooter squad who can pin a fly's wings to a tree. Naturally, they tag Aang like it's nothing and throw him in the Fire Nation prison. By the way, this is kinda stupid that these archers even pulled this off, but whatever. Enter the Blue Spirit. Creepy masked guy with dual swords that doesn't say a word. This dude slices through guards like he's in Assassin's Creed, and Aang teams up with him for one of the best jailbreaks ever. They eventually escape, and that's when, surprise, the Blue Spirit is Zuko. Yes, Prince I Hate the Avatar just risked his life to save him because apparently letting Zhao win is worse than teaming up with his own enemy. Now for episode 14, we kick off with Team Avatar stumbling into another village. What a surprise, where everyone is obsessed with this lady named Aunt Wu. This old lady who can see the future. People plan their entire lives around her predictions. Katara eats it up, Aang thinks it's silly, and Sokka, he thinks she's a fraud and the villagers hate him, which is funny. Katara asks Aunt Wu about her future and gets told she'll marry a powerful bender. Wink wink, I think we pretty much know who that's going to be. Zuko. Katara's in denial, however, and Aang's blushing so hard he's a tomato, and Sokka's gagging in the corner. We also get this girl who starts to make moves on Aang, kinda gross because she looks like she's 5 years old, but whatever. Meanwhile, the real drama is a volcano about to erupt and wipe out the whole village. Aunt Wu told them they basically don't have to worry about anything, it'll sort itself out. Even when they see giant skull-shaped clouds in the sky, they're like, nah, we're good. Aang ends up saving the day, and what's funny about this, because of that, technically Aunt Wu's prophecies came true. We also see Katara start to maybe consider Aang as more than just a friend. Hint, she doesn't really care, she's just a tease at this point in the series. Now in episode 15, while traveling, the group reunites with Bato, an old friend of Katara and Sokka's father, Hakata. They're excited to hear news about their dad's war efforts, but Aang feels left out and fears they'll abandon him to rejoin Hakata. When a messenger delivers a map to his location, Aang hides it from Katara and Sokka out of jealousy. Now I will say this is a really low move by Aang. But yeah, his secret is later exposed, leading to anger and distrust from the siblings. Meanwhile, Zuko hires Goth Mommy June and her Shearshu, a large tracking beast, to follow Katara's lost necklace, basically track her scent, and it can do so anywhere in the world. At the end, Katara and Sokka choose to stay with Aang instead of leaving to find their father. For episode 16, The Deserter, starts with Team Avatar sneaking into a Fire Nation town during a fire festival because apparently the words lay low means nothing. They hear about Zhang, the Deserter, a firebending master who ditched the Fire Nation. He's the first person to actually quit, so naturally Aang demands lessons. Zhang's like, no, you're too impatient. Then Avatar Roku literally pops up and tells him, you will teach Aang or else. So what do you think happens? He immediately caves. Training goes about as well as expected. Aang ignores every warning about fire being destructive and burns Katara. She ends up crying, Sokka loses it and tackles him on the ground. Plot twist, however, Katara discovers she can heal herself with water. For the first time, she's able to do something incredible, and it's by accident. So episode 17 kicks off with Aang hearing rumors about people flying in the Northern Air Temple. He gets super hyped thinking air nomads have survived, but when they arrive, that's not the case. It's just some Earth Kingdom inventors with gliders pretending. The place is basically remodeled into an air tech playground complete with pipes, ramps, and that makes Aang lose his mind because he feels like they're disrespecting his culture. Then he meets Tao, a wheelchair prodigy zooming around like it's Mario Kart. Sokka nerds out over gadgets while Aang realizes the inventor's dad is secretly building weapons for the Fire Nation just to survive. It's pretty bleak, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Then the gang convinces everyone to resist instead of enabling war crimes. And this is where we cue the big siege. Fire Nation tanks everywhere attacking, Sokka invents a hot air balloon plan, and they manage to win. Except now the Fire Nation has the idea for hot air balloons, which is not great. Hopefully that doesn't come to bite them in the butt later on. Right? And now for episode 18, The Waterbending Master, which starts with Team Avatar finally reaching the Northern Water Tribe. Katara meets Master Pakku, who tells her girls can only heal, not fight. Katara's face says it all. Try me. And then she goes straight in for the kill on this man and puts up a solid fight, but gets shuts down when Pakku begins to take this seriously. I just want you to note she had zero chance of winning this fight. But even after her oppressive audition, she still doesn't get the opportunity to be taught by him because he doesn't really care until he realizes her Gram is his old past love, his caked up queen Gram. And because of that, he decides to teach her, and that's basically it. Meanwhile, Sokka's falling in love with Princess Yue, and she eats it up because, I mean, he is the backbender. I have a feeling these two are going to end up together in the series. They have such great chemistry, right? And this is where episode 19 and 20 take a turn in the series. Admiral Zhao basically rolls up with a Fire Nation armada so massive, it's like he may be compensating for something. The whole tribe braces for war. Sokka immediately falls head over heels for Princess Yue, who is engaged. While all this is happening, Aang decides it's time for a little spirit world side quest. He slips into ghost mode to get advice, leaves his body wide open for kidnapping, and that's where Zuko shows up, snatches him, and dips. Eventually, Team Avatar is able to track him down, and that's where Katara dunks on Zuko, giving her the record for the fastest fight in the entire franchise. I mean, what did Zuko expect? It's the full moon, and Katara surrounded by water and ice. Now, back in the tribe, Zhao unveils his master plan. Kill the moon spirit itself. Yes, the literal moon. Iroh, who's been sipping tea and cracking jokes for 18 episodes, finally gets serious and tells Zhao this is going to be a cosmic level mistake. Zhao doesn't really care. He strikes down the moon spirit and the world instantly plunges into gray. And Iroh immediately goes in for the kill, ready to take Zhao's life. We also get to see Aang, I guess, go Super Saiyan because this man literally merges with the ocean spirit into this massive towering water kaiju with glowing eyes, tidal waves. He tears through Zhao's fleet like he's ripping a piece of paper or playing with children's toys. This is the most terrifying thing I have ever seen Aang do in the series so far. But the price to bring back balance came from someone, Yue. See, as a baby, her life was saved by the moon spirit, and now she had to give it back. So she says goodbye to Sokka in one of the saddest moments of the series, which kind of sucks. I really thought they were going to make it to the end. And then she just vanishes, becoming the new moon spirit. So technically, I guess that means she's the moon in the sky, right? The world regains its color, waterbending regains their strength, and balance is restored. Zhao gets snatched up with a giant waterbending kaiju, and is even offered a chance to survive by Zuko. He refuses it out of sheer pride and is swallowed by the ocean spirit. And when all the chaos ends, the Northern Water Tribe mourns Yue. Katara officially takes up teaching Aang waterbending. Sokka is quietly grieving, and he deserved more. Aang at the same time is still shaken up by the raw power of the Avatar state and realizes this was just one battle in a much bigger war. Book 1 closes not with victory, but with massive loss and sacrifice. And that's when we jump to Book 2 in the next episode.